Hey guys, it's Will from EDM Tips, and today we're going to look at panning and stereo width and how you can do it properly. So this was a question I had from one of my readers a couple of weeks ago, or one of my subscribers. He said, how do I know what to pan, when to pan it, and where to pan it? So firstly, what is panning? So we've got two ears. We hear in stereo. All that panning is making some instruments go to the left, making some instruments go to the right, and some go down the middle. But it's more to it than that because there's stereo width as well. So you might have a sound that is going down the middle, but it also has audio information out to the left and right as well. So we're going to go through all of that today. Now panning is part of the mixing stage, so if you want more mixing tips, you can download my 30 essential EDM mixing tips for free below this video. Don't forget to share and subscribe and leave a comment below this video. So a great way to get started with panning is to visualize it like you've got a stage and your music is being played by a band. So you have the kick drum in the middle, you'll have the lead singer in the middle, and you'll have the other instruments around the stage. So I'm going to hop into Ableton Live now, and I'm actually going to give you some audio examples. So without further ado, let's get it done. Okay, so if you imagine a real stage with real instruments on it, then you will get a good idea of how to pan. So you would have the kick drum in the middle, and if you imagine the drum kit, you might have the hi-hats out to the side or the toms out to the side slightly. You're probably going to have the lead singer pretty much central, and any backing singers might be out to the side and behind slightly. And then things like a piano, they could be panned out either side, and then effects and whatnot, again, they can go out to the sides. Now that is imagining your song as though it's being played by real instruments on a stage, and obviously as it's electronic dance music, there are instruments that you wouldn't guess on the stage, like crazy synthesizers and sweepers and stuff like that. And generally the most important element, they're the ones that go central in the stage. So in dance music, that is going to be the kick, absolutely, the bass line, the lead vocals or the lead synth, if you've got a lead synth instead of vocals, and then all the supporting stuff can be slightly panned out. But what I always recommend doing is actually mixing the track, is mixing your song in mono primarily by having a mono switch on the master channel just with a keyboard shortcut. So you can change it from 100% mono like this, and then you can quickly switch to stereo. So you can quickly check that it still sounds good in stereo and in mono. But in terms of frequency range, basically everything below about 130 Hz to 140 Hz should be in mono, and there are a couple of reasons for that. It stems primarily from when dance music was pressed onto records, and not just dance music, any music. And bass waves are a lot bigger than the higher waves, and that would make the needle in the groove of the record bounce from left to right, because that's how it would read out stereo images. And for these bass lines, if it bounced left and right with these bigger waves, it would move a lot, and sometimes the needle will actually fall out of the groove, and you trust me, you do not want that whilst you're DJing or at any point. So when you'd send a track to be mastered, to be pressed onto vinyl, they'd always make everything under about 130 Hz mono anyway to avoid that happening. But it's still a good idea these days, and there are a couple of reasons for that. One is because you want the kick and the bass to be equal power wherever you are in the club or wherever you hear your music, because they are the main elements. So if, for instance, you're on one side of the club and the cymbal crash doesn't sound quite as loud because it's coming out of the other speaker, that's not in and of itself a massive problem. But if your kick or your bass or your main vocals are not sounding great from every point in the club or the festival, well, that's a real issue, because then you're losing the very soul of the entire song. So yeah, anything about 130, 140 Hz, try and make that mono, and you can use plugins like this Isotope Imager to do that. You can see it's a multi-band. So you've got these 4 different bands, everything under 140, you can just bring that in, and I'll show you the difference that it makes. It's going to be quite subtle, but it's important. So let's just solo everything 140. And this is how it is before it goes into the plugin. And you can see on this vector scope here, you can see that there's some stereo imaging going on. And if we push it up, makes it even wider. But we will actually want to make that maybe not completely mono, which is that, but certainly not more than that really. I mean, that's okay. So that is a great way to make everything below 140 mono. And when it comes to the lower mid and upper mid ranges, you can start spreading those out a bit. You can see there that the vector scope is going wider, so you can actually push those out a bit and make it nice and wide. In terms of left and right panning, again, just imagine you have a stage in front of you and you're going to pan things accordingly. So let's listen to our kick. Bam, that's in the middle. Bass line, that's in the middle too. Now when we get to the drums, you can hear we've got hats and ride cymbals out to the sides slightly. And I mean, you know how to pan things, you just use left and right on your pan controls there. And that's it, it's as simple as that. And when it comes to vocals, you'll hear that the main lead vocal is bam, right in the center. But when the backing vocals come in, I've actually got those panned like left and right. So listen to that. So that backing vocal there is nice and out to the side, just like it would be on a real stage. So she's got her singers behind her, left and right. And that makes us feel like it's natural and the way it should be. Now, rather than just having everything panned and still, you can create some interest using panning as well. So for our congs here, I've actually added an auto panner. And these congs are higher than the mono bass frequencies, so they're higher than about 140 Hertz, so it's absolutely fine to pan them. So this is with the auto pan off. They're just central because it's a mono sample. We'll put the auto pan on. And if you're wearing stereo headphones or you've got stereo monitors, you'll be able to hear that bouncing left and right. And that just makes it all sound a bit more exciting. Keeps your ears guessing, bit of ear candy, lovely. So let's listen to it. So we can hear that bouncing around. Now, when it comes to actually doing the panning, I usually leave that quite late in the stage because it's kind of like adding icing to the cake. So if your music doesn't sound good in mono, it's not going to sound good in stereo. That's just the way it is. So try and work in mono as much as you can, or at least don't get caught up in too much panning and adding stereo width until later in the stage. Now, I've linked to a video up there on different ways to create stereo width, but there are a couple of things you want to look out for, so check out that video if you haven't seen it already. But again, adding stereo width and panning is definitely something I do much later in the production stage. Of course, it's okay to do it as you go along, but try not to get too obsessed with it because the panning isn't what's going to make your music sound amazing. It's just kind of icing on the cake. Now, another great place to add stereo width to make your mix sound lovely and wide is on the reverb. So if you've got your reverb on a auxiliary channel, that is a great place where you can add stereo width, and you could do that in the, I mean, reverbs are generally quite wide in the stereo field anyway, but again, you could add something like the Ozone Imager. The Ozone Imager is actually free, not the multiband one I was using earlier, but you can download this free one, and that is a great way to add stereo width. But again, make sure that you don't have stereo width below about 130, 140 Hertz. So if you have got quite a bassy reverb, and actually you should do this with reverbs anyway, just roll off everything under about 130 Hertz. And that will keep your mix nice and clean and your stereo field tasty and wide. Now, you can also do what's called LCR panning, and all that stands for is left, center, right. And it's a very simplistic way of panning, and it works for a lot of people. You just have your main elements in the middle, like your kick, your bass, your vocal, or whatever it is, a synth perhaps. And then the other elements that you do pan, you just pan them hard left and right, 100%. And then you're not getting too caught up with, 66% left and 73% right. And it keeps things a lot easier. It's not something I personally use, but it's definitely a technique that a lot of engineers and producers swear by, so it's worth checking out. In fact, I'll make a video on that too at some point. So in a nutshell, to summarize, keep your most important things central, keep everything below 130 Hertz mono. In the mid-range, you can start to go a bit crazy, get things wide. If you've got a piano, you might have the low notes slightly to the left and the high notes slightly to the right, just like in real life. And then the very high frequencies, again, you can go a bit crazy with the panning and the stereo width there as well. Just think of it kind of like a funnel with your mono and your low end in the middle. And then the higher you go, the more you can spread out. And that is panning and stereo width. So there you have it, guys. That is an overview of panning in electronic dance music and how to do it. Again, if you want more mixing tips, you can download my free guide below this video. Other than that, thanks for subscribing. Cheers and happy producing. I'll see you next time.